This is Sureka Bhaskar presenting to you the daily news analysis from Narayana IAS Academy. In today's daily news analysis, we'll be discussing various topics from The Hindu and Indian Express. Let's get into the topics. The first topic is 1/3 of India's coastline vulnerable to erosion, which is from the Indian Express, actually talks about the NCCR report on the vulnerability of India's coastline to erosion. The second one talks about a recent WMO report on the shrinking of the glaciers. The third one is the journey towards a plastic-free world, where we discuss about the plastic pollution and the IMC under UNEP's third round of meetings at the Nairobi and their drafting of the zero draft in order to bring an internationally binding solution or internationally binding agreement in order to curb the plastic pollution by 2025. The next one is the recent NCRB report that talks about the increasing crime rates as well as increasing death and the suicide rates in India 2022. Next, we'll be looking into Ambedkar Mahaparinirvan Divas, which commemorates the death anniversary of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and his notable contributions to the national freedom and the framing of the Constitution. The first topic for today is a recent study conducted by NCCR, that is the National Center for Coastal Research, on the vulnerability of India's coastline to erosion. So this can be relevant or mapped to the mains GS paper 1, geographical features, and the changes in the geographical features and what impact does it actually have. If we look into the news, the National Center for Coastal Research, that is NCCR, recently observed that over 1/3 of India's coastline is vulnerable to erosion. So if you look into the highlights of the study, they have noted that of the overall coastline, about 33.6% of the Indian coastline is vulnerable to erosion, while 26.9% is under accretion and the remaining 39.6% is in a stable state. So over here, we need to know the difference between what is erosion and what is accretion. So accretion is the process where the sediments actually build up on the shore and it leads to the outward growth of the shoreline. So this is basically the opposite of erosion. So erosion is nothing but the degrading or the degeneration of the soil by wave action and other processes. Okay. So next one is what the report notes that the causes. The shoreline changes have been attributed to a combination of natural as well as human activities. And of course, the impact will be, it will pose a great threat to the livelihoods of the fishing communities. Going forward, the report also notes the vulnerable regions to the coastal erosion. That is, it says that in Andhra Pradesh, out of 116 beaches surveyed, 35 beaches are vulnerable to erosion, and similarly, it records the other states which are vulnerable to coastal erosion, such as Goa, followed by Maharashtra, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka. So now let us understand the concept of coastline erosion. So before moving into the concept, let us actually know about or brush up the geography of India's coastline. Okay, so the length of India's mainland coastline is about 6,100 kilometers. And if you include the islands of Andaman and Nicobar as well as Lakshadweep, then it actually sums up to about 7,500 kilometers approximately. It encompasses 9 states along the coastline, and Gujarat has the longest coastline, with Goa recording the shortest coastline of about 160 kilometers. So now let us move into understanding of what is coastal erosion. So basically, if you see, coastal erosion is a natural process, okay, which is nothing but the loss or the displacement of land or the long-term removal of sediments and rocks along the coastline. And it takes place by a number of natural factors like hydraulic action, which is nothing but the wave action on the rock that results in the degeneration of the coastline, or by attrition or abrasion or by the process of solution. So if you look into this, abrasion is nothing but bits of rocks and sands in waves grind down the cliff and it actually surfaces down like a sandpaper. And if you look into solution, the acids which are present in the seawater will dissolve the rock surface. For example, such Rock surfaces can be observed in chalk or limestone are best examples of this action. Next is attrition. Attrition is a process where waves smash the rocks and pebbles on the shore into each other and they break and become smaller and smoother. So these are the factors that actually result in coastline erosion. Moving forward, let us actually look into what are the major causes of coastal erosion. They are nothing but the tides. It actually happens by the action of waves. It actually happens by means of winds, where they are not just a generator of waves, but also they aid in the landward movement of the dunes. And this is popularly referred to as aeolian erosion. And moving towards the next natural cause is the storm. They actually result in a storm surge, and the high energy waves actually result in catastrophic coastline erosion. Followed by this is sea level rise. This can also increase in the coastal erosion because the waves can extend further up and along the beaches and the cliffs. However, I told you that the coastal erosion is a natural process. But the recent instances that the NCCR reports of this coastline erosion are the anthropogenic causes. The human intervention and the activities, that is the destructive activities like dredging of tidal entrances and navigation channels, construction of harbors and other infrastructures, and the river water regulation work such as damming, and then destruction of mangroves, which actually act as natural buffers, and beach sand mining have been very destructive anthropogenic factors that have led to coastal erosion. Moving forward, we will look into the NCCR report on the coastal erosion of 2021. So what has been the incidence and how has been the incidence of coastal erosion in India is that if you look into this map, as I told you, the Indian coastal region consists of 9 states, which includes Gujarat, Maharashtra, Goa, Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Puducherry, West Bengal, and Daman and Diu. So over here, this particular NCCR report of 2021, this noted that West Bengal actually suffered the maximum erosion, where around 60% of the coastline had already been eroded. And also, it has found out that 34% is under varying degrees of erosion and 26% of the coastline was of accreting nature and the remaining 40% was in a stable state. It also noted that more erosion was happening in the eastern coast than the western coast. This is because the instances or the incidence of cyclones were frequent in the eastern coast, that is the Bay of Bengal, when compared to the Arabian seaside. Now let us look into the impacts of coastline erosion. Of course, coastline erosion has impact on the livelihood, that is of about 170 million of people out of the 1.4 billion people have been affected by the coastal erosion. Next one is the economic impact, where fishing industry and the coastal tourism will be affected because of the vulnerability of the coastal region, especially if you see the tourist spots like Goa. And moving on, then the coastal erosion also has environmental impacts, where we actually have the loss of marine habitats, and finally the disaster vulnerability. That is, the loss of natural buffers such as mangroves due to coastal erosion may signal an increased vulnerability from the disasters. So what are the basic measures to prevent the coastline erosion? So there are actually hard structures or structural engineering options that actually help us in order to prevent or keep the coastal erosion under check. That is, we have structures like the groin, then we have the seawall, and structures like offshore breakwater and artificial headland can be created. So if you see, you can actually look at these particular pictures, which are the representation of the groin, the seawall, offshore breakwater, as well as artificial headland. So first let us look into what is the groin. A groin is nothing but a coastal structure which is actually mounted perpendicular to the coast, and it is actually kept from the shore into the sea, so that this prevents the coastline erosion. And similarly are the other structures. Moving on to the soft structural and engineering options, we have the beach nourishment, we have the dune building or the reconstruction, and finally comes the coastal revegetation. So let us look into some of the government measures that the government has taken. Coastal erosion in check. These are the government measures that are aimed to keep the coastal erosion under check. They include the Coastal Regulation Zone Notification 2019, the Coastal Zone Management Plan, and the Hazard Line Delineation. So basically, if we see the Coastal Regulation Zone 2019, it aimed at conserving and protecting the coastal stretches of the country. And then this actually established the NDZs, that is the no development zones, where no kind of development activities should actually take place so that the coastline erosion is under check. The next one is the Coastal Zone Management Plan, where the top government officials of all the states and the UTs had actually come together in order to keep a check on the coastal erosion. And the final one is the hazard line delineation. The next article is about the recent report of the World Meteorological Organization on the shrinking of glaciers. So this is very important because as it finds mentioned in the syllabus, under GS paper 3, under environmental pollution and degradation, and as we know, climate change is very important topic in the examination. And also under prelims, you can find under world geography. So now let's move ahead. This particular topic on cryosphere and glaciers and pollution actually holds much importance in the examination because in the previous year questions, if you see, in 2020 there had been a question on Siachen Glacier, that is its location. Sometimes the associated rivers can be asked, and if you look at the PYQ, that is Mains PYQ of 2017, they had asked about the cryosphere's effect on global climate and the climate change as a global problem, and with respect to Himalayan and coastal states of India, there had been a question. So climate change with respect to glaciers and all the other dimensions always hold relevance for the exam. So moving ahead, the World Meteorological Organization, that is the WMO, had published a recent report that titled The Global Climate 2011-20, A Decade of Acceleration. So this report is nothing but it is a summary of the state of the extreme climate events that had actually taken place and the socio-economic impact that it had had in the past decade, that is 2011 to 2020. So now let's look into the key highlights of the report. The report actually records that for the period of 2011 to 2020, the global mean temperature was around 1.10 to 0.12 degrees Celsius above the era of Industrial Revolution. This is nothing but around the mid-18th century. And when you look into the amount of carbon dioxide emission into the atmosphere, that had also nearly increased by 50%, contributing to global warming. And what are the reasons behind this increased carbon dioxide emission is that the combustion of fossil fuels, the destructive activities or the anthropogenic activities like the deforestation and the changes in the land use pattern. And between 2011 and 2020, the report also notes that the ocean has warmed at an increasing rate that has led to catastrophes like marine heat waves, sea level rise, tropical cyclones, and ocean acidification. Moving on, with respect to glaciers, the report has actually observed that the world glaciers had thinned by approximately 1 meter per year on an average between 2011 and 2020 due to global warming. And as we know, the heat waves were actually responsible for the highest number of casualties, and also tropical cyclones were there which caused a lot of economic damage. Moving on, with respect to that of the ozone hole, we actually find a positive trend in this particular dimension. That is, the ozone hole was smaller in 2011-2020 period when compared to the previous 2 decades. This success can be attributed to the Montreal Protocol, that is nothing but an agreement which banned the use of chlorofluorocarbons and other such substances which created the depletion of ozone from the stratosphere. Now looking into what are glaciers and their significance. As we all know, a glacier is usually a dense body, and it is a dense body of ice which is moving under its own weight. And all of us would have heard about the term cryosphere. It also found a mention in the exam as I showed you. So glaciers are a part of the Earth's cryosphere, and it encompasses all the frozen parts of the Earth. So the glaciers comprise almost 10% of the Earth's land surface. And also, so significance of glaciers. Glaciers actually are of a great significance as they regulate or they balance the Earth's climate due to the higher albedo. Albedo is nothing but the reflection, that is the reflection of the Earth's incident sunlight back into the atmosphere. So about 3/4 of the Earth's fresh water is stored in the glaciers. Now looking into the impacts of the glacial melting. So the first one is a sea level rise. The melting glaciers have actually contributed to a significant rise of the sea level of almost 2.7 centimeters since 1961. It has also altered the ocean circulation. It has also caused threats to the coral reefs, and it has also impacted the ice albedo feedback loop. So this is nothing but it is a process where melting sea ice reduces the Earth's reflectivity. As I told you, the more the number of glaciers, the higher is the albedo effect and the reflection of the incident sunlight into the into the atmosphere. So what happens as the glacier melts? The reflection power or the reflecting power of the glaciers actually reduce. That results in the reduced Earth's overall reflectivity. It absorbs more sunlight that will further accelerate global warming and ice melt. Okay. So moving ahead, looking into the glaciers of the world, the majority of glaciers are restricted to, the Arctics, that is the Antarctica, Greenland and the Canadian Arctic. And if you know, the largest glacier is Lambert-Fisher Glacier. All these are actually some of the facts which can be asked in the prelims examination. And outside the polar regions, if you see with respect to India, we have the Hindu Kush Karakoram Himalayan system that contains the largest number of glaciers, and this is referred to as the third pole of the Earth. So here is actually the map. If you see towards the eastern side, you have the Godwin-Austen, you have the Baltoro, you have Zemo, you have Kanchenjunga, and then we have the Biafo Glacier, the Trango, the Kedar-Bama Glacier, and all these things towards the western side. Now let us look into a few of the key initiatives that aimed at curbing or that aimed at controlling the melting of the glaciers due to global warming. The first initiative is the International Cryosphere Climate Initiative, the Global Climate Watch and the Arctic Council. With respect to India, the initiatives include the National Mission for Sustaining the Himalayan Ecosystem. The next topic that reads, the journey towards a plastic-free world has been taken from the Indian Express. And this can be mapped to environment ecology under prelims and GS paper 3, that is environmental pollution and degradation for mains. So particularly this news actually talks about the recent INC meeting, that is the third round of negotiations that they had in order to draft an internationally binding agreement in order to curb the menace of plastic pollution by 2025. So this is actually important because we have PYQs that have appeared in a similar fashion. If you look at this question from 2019 prelims, they had asked about extended producer responsibility that was introduced as an important feature in which one of the following. So these kind of questions are expected. So kind of meetings and their outcomes are very important from the UPSC prelims as well as mains. So now moving to the topic. The Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee under the United Nations Environment Program, that is the UNEP, recently met, because the international community is trying to bring a legally binding instrument in order to end plastic pollution worldwide. So what has happened is they have actually brought down, that is the outcome of the third round of talks at Nairobi was the zero draft. Okay, zero draft is nothing but it has a number of policy provisions and the challenges that are actually facing it, and what are the possibilities of this particular draft becoming implementable in the future is what we are going to see. So what are the provisions of the zero draft? It actually, first let's focus on the explanation and then the number of challenges facing the same. So legally binding, as I already told you, they are looking for strong options in order to bring out an internationally legally binding treaty in order to end plastic pollution. The objective is to end plastic pollution and to protect the human health and the environment. They also have mentioned about financial mechanisms. That is, what will be the financial mechanisms in order to determine the implementation of such a policy? What will be, they are talking about also including a plastic pollution fee and reducing the financial flow into high carbon footprint projects. Next, looking into the production aspect, the international community or the meeting actually aimed at the reduction of production of primary polymers. Next is the elimination of the polymers which are of great concern and problematic plastics. Next, moving on to the trade, they actually aim to bring restrictions on the trade of these polymers, chemicals as well as plastic products and waste. Now looking into the challenges that actually face these provisions include, however, the key provisions of this particular zero draft, it actually looks very attractive, but the international community or the countries across the globe are facing their own challenges in terms of the obligations they have and in terms of the production of the polymer, in terms of the polymer production that the country is obliged to, and the chemicals of concern, and also the financial mechanisms involved here. And next one, if you look into it, there has been a disagreement in the clause which says, while contributing to sustainable development, to protect economic interests. Like-minded countries demanded the deletion of financial provisions impacting the fossil fuel subsidies and environmentally unfavorable technologies. Next, there has been controversies due to the implications for industries, and there have been objections to discussing about reducing the plastic production. And finally, when we bring the restriction on the trade of the polymers, what happens is it is considered to impinge on the freedom and sovereignty of the nations and the group of nations with respect to their trade practices. Moving forward, let's just have a quick revision of what is plastic pollution and what are the sources of pollution and what are certain initiatives taken globally and what are the national efforts. So plastic pollution, as we know, it is the environmental presence of improperly disposed plastic which causes harm to the ecosystem and the wildlife and also potentially the human health. What are the types of plastic pollution? We know there are different types of plastic pollutions. First, you have the microplastics, which are lesser than 5 millimeter in size, which are resulted from the breakdown of larger plastic items. Then we have the single-use plastics like the bags and the bottles. We have the marine plastic pollution, that is the plastic that enter into the ocean that causes harm to the marine life through ingestion or entanglement and negative impacting of the ecosystem. Then we have the land-based plastic pollution that is actually accumulating on the land. In fact, in turn, they affect the soil quality, wildlife and the vegetation. Then we have the airborne microplastics and finally the plastics debris. We also have the plastic additives that are nothing but the chemicals which are used in the plastics like the plasticizers and flame retardants. All these actually leach into the environment. Next is, what are the impacts? We know that any kind of pollution will first impact the ecosystem because there are processes like the bioaccumulation and biomagnification. That is nothing but when an organism is subject to the continuous intake of a particular matter, or that actually leads to bioaccumulation. Biomagnification is excessive concentration of one particular toxin over a period of time. That is called as biomagnification, and concentration of toxic substances in the food chain. This is one of the impact of plastic pollution. Next one, as I told you, that these retardants actually leach down into the groundwater, and hence the groundwater in turn actually becomes polluted. Next one is food production challenges. That is the plastic pollution in water and the soil. This interferes with the agricultural processes, and this in turn impacts the crop growth, and it poses risk to the food production. Moving on, what are the initiatives that has been in place to reduce the plastic waste pollution is that with respect to India, we have the Plastic Waste Management Rule 2016, which mandated the manufacturers to manage the collection and recycling of their plastic products and prohibit certain types like, sub 50 micron bags. Then if you look in 2022, the government had banned the single-use plastic items, expecting a 20 to 25% reduction in the plastic waste. The initiatives also include promoting sustainable alternatives to plastics such as the cloth bags, the bamboo straws and steel bottles in place of Then the extended producer responsibility. This is a framework which compels the producer to collect and recycle the plastic waste they produce or they generate. Okay, so this will further emphasize their accountability. Moving on, let's look into the global initiatives. We have the WWF's campaign of No Plastic in Nature that aims to fix a broken system using a holistic approach. Next comes the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative that was actually launched by the UNEP and the UNWTO with the collaboration of other stakeholders that actually aims to reduce the plastic pollution from the tourism sector positively by 2025. The next article is about the recent reports released by the NCRB on increasing suicidal and accidental deaths and increasing crime rates in India. And we can map this to GS Paper 2 governance. So recently, as I told you, the National Crime Records Bureau has released the Crime in India Report 2022, looking into the major highlights of the report or the findings of the report. So the Crime in India report actually says that there has been and increased in the crime rate against the vulnerable sections of the population. That is, if we look into the specifics, there has been a steep rise in the crime against the vulnerable section, that is against women, children, senior citizens, scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. Also, the cyber crimes had actually peaked and it has increased nearly by up to 25%, and that was mostly because of fraud, extortion and sexual exploitation. Also, there has been 25% of increase in cases under Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, that is UAPA, and also cases under sedition had dramatically dropped in 2022. Moving on, let's look into the accident deaths and the suicides in India 2022 report. It has been noted that around 1.7 lakh suicides have been reported in 2022. 1/3 were committed by daily wage earners, and the most common causes being family problems and illness, drug abuse. And the added problems can also be poverty, exploitation, and unemployment. So if you look into the predominance of these cases state-wise, the maximum number of suicides had taken place in Maharashtra, followed by Tamil Nadu and Madhya Pradesh. And if we see the statistics in women, around 52% were homemakers, and then the students, and then the daily wages. So these were the order of the increased suicide deaths in India according to the NCRB 2022 report. So now let us look into the gaps or the issues that this particular report faces. So NCRB basically does not claim the figures to be actual numbers because the data only records the incidence of registered crimes. So number of unregistered crimes actually can be way more than the reported numbers. And there has been problems of underreporting. Why? Because women find it very difficult to register FIR. They are silenced many a times, and true incidents of violence against children can be higher, and that also have gone underreported. And also the other vulnerable sections of the society like the SCs, STs and the senior citizens were forced not to report the incidents of crime against them. So how can there be increase in the cases in any region? Is that in case if there is an increase in case which has been registered in any region, it was due to greater awareness, it was due to increased presence of law and order agencies and citizen-centric initiatives. And also one of the major gaps that the NCRB report faces is that it does not capture the socio-economic causative factors of crimes. So now looking into the NCRB, the details about NCRB, it is a government organization which was established in the year 1986 and it operates under the Ministry of Home Affairs. The basic aim, objective and the function of this organization is to collect and analyze the crime data at the national level. And the functions is that it actually helps in collecting, compiling and disseminates the crime statistics, and it maintains the databases on various crime related aspects so that it assists in better and efficient policy formulation for crime control. The next article will be Mahaparinirvan Divas, and this is nothing but it is commemorating the death anniversary of our father of constitution, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. So we can map this to the GS paper 1, which talks about modern Indian history. And let's move on. So this topic can be mapped to the history of India and Indian national movement, and also to GS paper 1 under mains, where we discuss about modern Indian history. So moving forward, there has been a previous year question in the prelims on Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and the parties that were established by him. Okay, so these kind of questions are actually very important. So here it reads, which of the following parties were established by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar? First one is Peasants and Workers Party of India, All India Scheduled Caste Federation and the Independent Labour Party. So select the correct answer using the codes given below. If you read the chapter in depth and about the different personalities which are important from the exam perspective, then you will know that the answer is 2 and 3 only. That is All India Scheduled Caste Federation and the Independent Labour Party. So why this particular personality is in news is that the Prime Minister had paid homage to Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar recently, that is today, December 6th, commemorating his death anniversary. So let us actually look into the different roles played by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in framing the constitution and also in igniting the spirit of nationalism. So first, what is Mahaparinirvan Divas? So what do you mean by parinirvana? It is actually a Sanskrit term in Buddhism that signifies a release of freedom after death. So if you look into the term Mahaparinirvana, according to the Buddhist text, this particular word, that is Mahaparinirvana, means that it is ultimate liberation from the cycle of birth and death. So this was according to the text, that is Mahaparinibbana Sutta, that it signifies the death of Lord Buddha at the age of 80, which is regarded as original Mahaparinirvana, that is symbolizing his ultimate liberation from the cycle of birth and death. So about this particular day, you know, I have already told you that 6th December is observed as Mahaparinirvan Divas to commemorate the death anniversary of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, and in order to recognize his remarkable contributions to the society and his relentless efforts in advocating the rights of the marginalized sections of the society. So now we look into certain facts of Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar. He was actually born in the year 1891 in the central province, which is now the state of Madhya Pradesh, and he passed away on 6th December 1956. And he was awarded India's highest civilian honor, that is Bharat Ratna, posthumously in 1990. And now let us look into the significant roles that was played by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. So as we all know that he is the father, or he is regarded as the father of Indian Constitution, where he played a pivotal role in drafting and framing the Indian Constitution. Next one is that he was a chairman of the drafting committee, that is, he led the drafting committee for the new constitution. He was appointed to the Executive Council of Viceroy as a Labour member. He was the Minister of Law in 1947 in independent India's first cabinet. And he was a statesman for social justice. That is, we all know that he fought relentlessly for the rights of Dalits and socially backward classes. If you look into the other notable contributions by Dr. Ambedkar, he was part of the Mahat Satyagraha in 1927, which was nothing but this particular Satyagraha was carried out in opposing the views of not allowing the untouchables, that is the so-called untouchables, to drink water from the Mahat tank. Next is he had been a participant of all the 3 roundtable conferences, and he had signed the Pune Pact with Mahatma Gandhi, leading to increased reserve seats for the depressed classes in the legislature. And with respect to the foundation of the Reserve Bank of India, he laid his ideas before the Hilton Young Commission that laid the foundation of the Reserve Bank of India. The journals published by him include Muknayak, Bashishkrit Bharat, Samata and Janata. And the books include Annihilation of Caste, Buddha or Karl Marx, The Untouchable, Buddha and His Dhamma, The Rise and the Fall of Hindu Women. Okay, now let us solve some prelims and mains practice questions. The first question reads, consider the following statements with regards to 2022 Crime in India report released by the NCRB. The first statement, the sedition cases have increased despite the Supreme Court judgment in 2022. Tamil Nadu has registered the highest number of suicide cases followed by Maharashtra. There is an abrupt rise in cyber-related crimes in the past 5 years. Now choose the correct option from the following. Only one statement is correct. This is the change in the trend of the UPSC, which gives the statements as only one statement is right, only 2 statements are correct, all the statements are correct, and none of the statements are correct. So if you revise whatever we have studied, we will deduce that the answer is option A. That is, only one statement is correct. The next question reads, consider the following statements with respect to Mahaparinirvan Divas. Parinirvana is a Sanskrit term in Buddhism that signifies release of freedom after death. Yes. The next one, according to Mahaparinibbana Sutta, the death of Buddha is regarded as the original Mahaparinirvana, which is also right. Mahaparinirvan Divas is observed on 6 December to commemorate the death anniversary of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Yes, again right. So how many of the above given statements are right? Only 1, only 2, all 3 and none. So the answer is C, that is all 3 statements are correct. Which of the following landforms are produced on coastal areas by wave erosion? As we know, all the erosional and depositional landforms are actually important of water and then air as well as groundwater, and all these things are important. So this reads, which of the following landforms are produced on the coastal areas by wave erosion? Sea cliff, bay, sea caves, sea stacks, sea cliff, wave built terrace sandbars, lagoon, bay, sea cliff, lagoon, sandbars, sea stacks, sea cliff, bay and lagoon. The answer is A. So it is better and it is advisable that we actually go through GC Leong and the NCRTs for better clarity. We can see a question on glaciers and the mountain range. Consider the following pairs: Milam Glacier, Karakoram Range, Baltoro Glacier, Kumaun Range, Zemu Glacier, Sikkim Himalayas and Pindari Glacier, Garhwal Himalayas. How many of the pairs given above is or are incorrectly matched? So if you match it according to your knowledge, then the answer reads C, that is 3 only. Mains practice questions. In the light of the unavoidable use of plastic materials in our daily lives, what are some of the proactive measures and positive steps that individuals can take in order to minimize their environmental impact and promote sustainability? So in case of this question, as we discussed about the plastic pollution and the steps to avoid it, the global initiatives and what is the aspiration of the international community in order to curb it, we will actually start the introduction by defining what plastic pollution is. And in the body, we will talk about understanding and adhering to the local recycling guidelines, supporting the businesses and the products committed to eco-friendly packaging and minimizing the reliance on disposable plastics, and finally educating and raising awareness about plastic pollution. Finally, while writing the conclusion, we can emphasize on the proactive steps in daily life such as embracing the reusables and supporting eco-friendly products, empower individuals to play a pivotal role. So with these mains and prelims practice questions ends our daily news analysis. For further and regular updates, please like, share and subscribe to Narayana IAS Academy YouTube channel. Thank you.